Good morning, class. Happy Friday. Today is March 20, 2020. Today's learning target is for you to be able to explain the difference between a civic duty and a civic responsibility, and then be able to provide examples of what each one looks like in the United States. Here's the plan for today. First, what you need to do is write blog post number 2. This blog post should be titled Language of Citizenship. I'll give you more details about that in just a second. After that, we're going to go through examples of rights, duties, and responsibilities of citizenship. You should be taking notes during that. And then at the end of this video, I want to give you an update on this documentary LA 92 and some possibilities for what your test might look like. So the thing I need you to have done is finishing blog post number 2. Just a couple reminders. One, if you have any questions or concerns about anything, feel free to email me. Feel free to leave me a comment on Google Classroom. If you need more help than just what an email can provide, you can try to schedule a Google Hangout meeting with me. Just send me an email. We can try to make that work. Once again, I'm trying to make myself available between 10 and 3 to answer as many questions as necessary for students, since that's when you guys are expected to be working too. Otherwise, be checking PowerSchool, be checking my comments on Google Classroom on the work that you've been doing, trying to grade that quickly. I'm hoping to have both the extended Jeff definitions as well as the Citizenship Just the Facts worksheet both graded by 3 p.m. today. That way you can take a look at what scores you've got, check PowerSchool to grade, look at my feedback for what you got wrong, and then hopefully the rest of the weekend you can relax and not worry about school and be safe and healthy. So first, here is blog post number 2, Language of Citizenship. The question asks you, should naturalized citizens of the United States be required/expected to know English? Reading it, writing it, speaking it, why or why not? The vast majority of people in the United States have English as their primary language. However, the United States of America does not have an official language for its country. Therefore, is it appropriate to require naturalized citizens, the people who go through that process we talked about yesterday, and part of that process is taking that English proficiency test, should we require them to know English? Give me your thoughts. Explain in depth why or why not. I am looking for multiple reasons/examples for why you think the way you do. For all these blog posts, you're expected to give multiple examples. I am looking for probably 5 sentences, 5 to 8 sentences maybe. I don't want responses to be super long, but at the same time, I want enough depth of thought where you've got at least 5 sentences worth. So that's what needs to be done by 3 p.m. today. Okay, so Friday, March 20, 3 p.m. Have that blog post posted on EduBlogs. Make sure you sign into your account first, then go to add a new post. Do not comment on my original post. Sign into your account and create your own post, please. Right, so here's some notes for you. First, if you are a citizen of the United States, you have certain rights. For being here, a right is a privilege or claim to something. I will put this definition on Quizlet, which, by the way, I'm going to post a Quizlet for you at some point today that you guys can use to study. I have no idea if you're going to have to memorize these key terms for like a test, but assuming, and I'm still hopeful and optimistic, we'll be back at school at some point this school year, those are things you will want to know for an exam. So it would be worthwhile every once in a while reviewing things like Quizlet, and I'll post other review quizzes too. So things to know about rights in the United States. They are guaranteed by something called the Constitution. That'll be the next unit we talk about. What is the Constitution? What rights does it give you? These rights must be protected by laws and by the court system in the United States. And once again, they are guaranteed by the law of the land, the U.S. Constitution. Some examples, and this is not an exhaustive list. There are many others besides these, but if you're a U.S. citizen, you have the right to vote, to hold office, which means to be in a government position, like a senator or president. You have the freedom of speech and of the press, freedom of religion, right to a fair trial. And these freedoms, speech, religion, the press, They are not unlimited. That does not mean that you get to say or write or believe literally anything you want, no matter what. There are restrictions to that. We'll talk about those in the next unit. And you have the right to be protected when you are located in a different country, which might be a right to have right now with all this coronavirus going on, to have the United States watching out for you. Although this is a unique situation, the U.S. can't do a whole lot right now with other countries because travel is pretty much limited everywhere. So those are rights, and we'll focus more on those in the next unit. What I want to focus on more for this unit is the difference between a civic duty and a civic responsibility. Civic duties are required. These are things that you are required by law to do once you become a U.S. citizen. They are not optional. They're not voluntary. You need to do them. It's mandatory. Here are some of these civic duties, required obligations, mandatory. 1, you must obey the laws, whether they are national laws, local city laws, state laws. If you're a citizen, you obey the laws of the United States. Not optional. Second is you are required to defend the nation. That does not mean you have to serve in the military and literally defend it like on the battle lines. It just means you need to help protect and be loyal to the United States. If you are asked to, this doesn't happen always, but it probably will at some point once you turn 18 if you are a U.S. citizen, you'll be asked to serve on jury and possibly serve as a witness in court. Jury duty is something you get asked to do every so once in a while. I've only been asked once in my life. That was when I was living and teaching in Southern California. I went to the courthouse in San Bernardino. I waited about an hour just to get checked in because there were so many people. Once I filled out the paperwork and got signed in, I sat in this big room with lots of other people, and we were organized by groups: Group A, Group B, Group C, Group D, and Group E. On the intercom system, they called Group A first. Everybody in Group A went to get interviewed to see if they would serve on the jury. Then they called Group B about an hour later. I was in Group C, so an hour after Group B went, they then called Group D. Not sure why they skipped Group C, but they did. After about 30 minutes, they made the announcement that they had the full selection of jurors and everybody else remaining could leave. So I never actually got the full experience. I pretty much just wasted a school day sitting in a court doing absolutely nothing. Fourth example is paying taxes. That's tax season right now. Taxes are due in the middle of April. If you're a U.S. citizen, you will have to pay taxes on various things. And attending school, at the very least until the age of 16, in which you are then allowed to drop out. Good luck if you choose to do that, but you are required to go to school, whether that's a public school, home school, private school like WMC. That is a requirement, once again up to that age limit. So these are all examples of required things, mandatory, not optional. You have to do them. So civic responsibilities are different. While civic duty is required, civic responsibilities are actions and attitudes associated with democratic governance and social participation. These are not required. These are, however, strongly recommended because without these civic responsibilities being done by U.S. citizens, our democracy is not going to work well. And your role in that democracy will be limited, and you'll be a disservice to the country, part of what many people believe makes the United States great. So these are voluntary, they are recommended, they are encouraged. I am encouraging you to do a lot of these things as part of this class, but you're not going to go to jail, you're not going to pay a fine, the cops are going to show up at your door if you don't do these civic responsibilities. The first one is contributing to the common good. This is pretty vague and generic, can mean pretty much anything, but basically it's saying you need to help the overall good of our country. Right now, a very clear example of a civic responsibility would be this whole idea of social distancing, flattening the curve, doing what's best for the common good by staying at home and not putting those at risk in danger of getting this virus. Second one, and this is the one that usually people think of when they think of what it means to be a U.S. citizen, voting. You can vote once you're 18. That's a right you have only as a U.S. citizen. You are strongly encouraged to vote, but if you choose not to vote, then you're not going to go to jail or get a fine for that. I've been a part of 3 presidential elections since turning 18. I have voted in 2 out of the 3. The one I didn't vote in, nothing happened to me. I just missed the opportunity to make a difference as a U.S. citizen for this country, which I don't recommend doing. I regret that decision not to vote. Third one is you have the opportunity to hold government office. Once again, this simply means that you can run for a government position, whether it's a mayor, a judge, or something like that. You have that opportunity. Supporting election campaigns, whether that's financially, by fundraising, whether that's going to a rally or a march, watching debates, but you can support election campaigns. These are things going on right now as we're in the middle of an election year, presidential elections happening in November. And two more. One, the fifth one overall, is influencing the government. You can do this in a variety of ways: protests, marches. You can call a Congress member. There's a lot of ways you can influence government's decisions, since the government is meant to represent you, the citizen. And last one is to serve your community, which is very similar to the idea of contributing to the common good, but it's just more narrowly focused on Norton Shores, Spring Lake, Muskegon, Grand Haven, whatever community you're a part of. And I'll throw a new era just for you, Alyssa. So those are just some voluntary expectations. They're encouraged. They help make democracy and our country's government work, but there's no punishment if you choose not to do them. So last thing I want to talk about is next week at some point, I don't know what day, and I don't know what this looks like yet, I'm still brainstorming ideas, is you are going to be taking, at the very least, a test, and possibly both a quiz and a test. Now with this whole online learning thing, it would be foolish for me to give you a traditional written type of test or quiz. There's no way I can make sure you don't cheat. There's no way it actually is going to measure what you've learned, because you can just look at notes and worksheets and it's going to be super easy and a waste of time. So you're probably going to get something closer to like a project or a paper where you have to take the ideas we've talked about, you have to apply them in some sort of situation or in some form of way. Now I've talked to you guys about this documentary, and right before we had the school closed down, you got the permission slips. I know a couple of you turned them in because I saw them in my tray on Monday when I went to school. I am still possibly thinking about doing one of two things with this documentary. One, on Google Classroom, I'm going to post a question. The question is simply going to ask whether or not you have access to Netflix. For what it's worth, I don't have my own account, but I do have access to somebody else's that I could use. I am thinking about using this next week to have you guys on your own watch LA 92 because it is on Netflix. However, I'm not going to make that decision unless I know that all 15 students in this class have access to Netflix, as well as have permission from a parent or guardian to watch this. So on Google Classroom, I just need you to tell me yes or no. Do you have access to Netflix? Please do that by 3 p.m. today. The other option, which is one that's a little bit hopeful and optimistic, is postponing this documentary until we possibly get back to being actually at school. My concern with that is obviously we don't know 100% what this school closing looks like. For all we know, we'll never be at school for the rest of this year, and the rest of the year is online learning. We have no idea. So I'm a little hesitant to think about doing that because I want to watch this documentary. It's going to be a little risky if I try to have it, try to wait until later to have you guys watch it. The third option is to do nothing with LA 92, just abandon it and scrap it. I don't want to do that because I really like this documentary. I think it ties in a lot of the ideas we talk about, not just in this unit, but in other units too. What I will say though is expect some sort of test later. It might be more like a paper, might be just a bunch of open-ended type of questions with extensive writing. I will let you know for sure some point next week. Just be prepared for that. So, two things you really got to do. One, blog post number 2, make sure that's done by 3 p.m. today. And 2, just answer that question about this documentary, LA 92, yes or no, and I'll let you know what decision I make by next week. Otherwise, good luck the rest of this day. Have a good weekend. Be safe, be healthy. I'll talk to you next week.